Hello students, I have for you today a quick guided practice on Wohlfahrt number 44, the March etude, which is one of the TMEA region etudes for this season. Now let's talk about why they want to hear this etude. Well, I think there are two main things. Firstly, they want to see how well you manage the rhythm, which is essentially a dotted rhythm, and that you can play it without rushing. Second of all, I think they want to see that you can shift into the third position and that you can find the proper note relationships once you have completed your shifts into the third position. So we're going to work on each of those in turn. Without further ado, let's get started. The predominant rhythm in Wohlfahrt 44 is essentially a dotted rhythm, but it's one that Wohlfahrt has notated with an 8th note, a 16th rest, and a 16th note. This will sound very similar to if he had written a dotted 8th and a 16th, but the difference is that Wohlfahrt's rhythm will sound shorter and snappier than the original dotted rhythm. Regardless, the same principles apply that the best way to practice dotted rhythms is to subdivide, meaning that you break down the rhythms into smaller note values so that you can play them more precisely. Now, the best way to practice this is to chant along with a metronome. That way, when you go to play it on the instrument, you'll already have the rhythm mastered. Now, I have my metronome here set to 70 beats per minute, which is slow, but a good practice tempo. And you'll see that many metronomes have this subdivision drop-down menu where you can actually tell the metronome to play different rhythms. So rather than playing quarter notes here, like this, I'm going to set my metronome to play 16th notes at my chosen tempo, like this. Now, if your metronome doesn't have this feature, you can simply set your tempo to 280, since that will be 4 times faster than the quarter note tempo. Here's what it sounds like when I practice from measure 30, chanting over a metronome set to 16th note subdivisions. Ta 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 ta, etc., etc. Especially make sure that the last 16th note of each beat lines up perfectly with the 16th notes on your metronome. Pause the video and give the whole etude a try, chanting through in this manner. Now let's talk about some of the shifts that you have to play in this etude. It's often best to place a shift after a slower note and before a faster note. That's because this is the arrangement that gives you the most time to make the slide. For example, in this etude, we often want to shift between the 8th note of the dotted rhythm and before the 16th note. We also want to shift in such a way that I'm sliding at the end of the 8th note bow and not waiting until the beginning of the 16th note bow stroke to do the shift. Take, for example, measure 46. I'm starting on that 4th finger D in the first position and then sliding to that 2nd finger D in the 3rd position. So I want to place the slide at the end of the bow that plays the 4th finger, like this. And fast it would sound like this. But you see, the main point is that I'm not waiting to do my slide. I do it as soon as I can. Now you may notice that some of the fingerings in your edition have you shifting from a fast note to a slow note. For example, in measure 34, for me, I have... Now the timing of those shifts is kind of difficult, so I'd like to suggest some alternate fingerings. You should always defer to your music director or your private teacher which fingerings to use. These are just my personal suggestions that I think make the etude easier. So the suggested changes are in measures 24, 26, 30, 35, and 40. And in all of these cases, I've tried to keep the string that you're playing on the same, and I've just moved over the shift so that it occurs between a slow note and a fast note rather than vice versa. Finally, let's look at some of the hand positions that you have to play in the third position for this etude. Now, by hand positions, I'm talking about the particular spacings of the fingers. And to talk about this, I like to talk about whole steps and half steps. If you're not familiar with these terms, if you use tapes, a whole step is like the distance between 1 to 2 on the tape in the first position where the fingers are spread. And the half step is like the distance between the second and third finger, which is almost touching. So the standard tapes position that is used is whole step, half step, whole step between the fingers. I'll show you each hand position and how it lies on the instrument. And after I demonstrate, I'd like you to try pausing the video and playing through each hand position 1, 2, 3, 4 with the proper finger spacings. Now our first example comes from measure 29 and 30, where we play basically the standard hand position in the third position, which is to have my first finger on the third tape, and then a whole step to 2, half step to 3, whole step to 4. On the A string, I'm playing the notes D, E, F, and G, and on the E string, I'm playing the notes A, B, C, and D. This is what those hand positions sound like. And within the measure, they sound like this. Pause the video and try this hand position. We have a different hand position in measure 25 because of the B flat in beat 3. That note forces me to pull my second finger back closer to the first finger. That means that I'll be playing from first finger on the tape, half step, whole step, whole step. Those are the notes A, B flat, C, and D. Here's what that sounds like. And over the course of the measure, it'll sound like this. Pause the video and try this hand position. The trickiest hand position of the etude occurs in measure 47, where I play what's called a contracted hand position. It's called that because the distance from first to fourth fingers is a little bit narrower than usual. Ordinarily, we have some combination of 2 whole steps and 1 half step from 1 to 4. However, here we have 2 half steps and 1 whole step, making it narrower. Rather than putting the first finger on the third tape, I'm going to put it a half step above the third tape. And I will be playing half step, whole step, half step between the fingers. I'm playing the notes G sharp, A, B, and C, which sound like this. In the course of the measure, it sounds like this. Pause the video and try this hand position. Here is a performance of measure 24 to the end, so you can hear how everything fits together.